never taken yoga sculpt before till you started doing them on IG. And the first time I took it, I had already done like a workout. And so I was like, oh, let me do some yoga, because I work out and then I do yoga, like a workout, like a HIIT workout with, burpees and strength training. So, and then I go and do yoga, and I did that for the first time. And I was like, oh my God, like, I can't do this back to back. Like, this isn't the same kind of yoga I thought I was signing up for.
Yoga still is not really yoga. It's like what I tell people, it's that it's a fitness class that's loosely based on a yoga flow, but it's not. And in a class in the studio, when it goes for an hour, we generally have more time to kind of like wind down at the end and stretch a little bit more. But I noticed that people's attention spans started to decrease as the weeks went on with the online stuff. And so I shortened up that class a little bit to 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great class though. I was like, oh man. So ever since then, I was like, I'm preparing myself for it. Cause I was like, I was not ready. Cause I was like huffing and puffing. And every time you say do a push-up, I'm like, girl, oh my God, if she makes me do a push-up one more time. But the way you do it, but I'm so like inspired by you. And so I do it. And I just, so those are good. So I can't wait to take a class in person one day, and I'll be like doing it really good though by that time, I feel like, because I've had the practice. So you'll never know I'm struggling anymore. I'm getting it all out of me now. So
well, just keep in mind that Yoga Sculpt is meant to be a class where you take breaks.
Sure.
So don't feel bad if you're not like powering through from beginning to end, because it's definitely meant to like take breaks. And I fool people when I'm teaching it, because I will only do the first few reps, and then I get up and I walk around the room and I talk and
then come back to it like if it was nothing. But I appreciate you guys doing that. It's just been so nice to like connect with you even in that way, and learn something new. I never taken a class like that, so it was nice to do that, and I've been trying to stick to it ever since. And add it to my regime now. So
I feel like it keeps the teachers engaged as well. Like, some of them are at home doing online school, and I think it's been a really nice way to give the teachers kind of like a little bit of time to grow, a little bit of a sense of purpose each day, like a little bit of a schedule, because it's hard to keep a schedule when there's no schedule happening in anyone's life, really. Overall it's been a good experience.
That's awesome. Good. And that's good to hear. Well, I'm excited to have you join me. I mean, we've already started, so, I just want to kind of continue on and have just a great conversation. My idea with this episode was to talk about getting unstuck, which we kind of just went briefly into, where, things have changed so drastically, and people can feel stuck. And I know you even mentioned something about yourself, if you don't mind me saying, that really inspired, like, you know what, I want to talk to Kitty about this, and just ways that we can encourage that. So that's what I'm excited to kind of dive into in a little bit, and just encourage other people to get moving and to get unstuck, and to share what it is you do, but also just talk about, other ways to do it, and to let them know they're not alone. Like, we're all at some point in a place, whether it was now during current times, or even, even after we come out of this, we still might get to a place where we're stuck again, where things have gone stagnant. So I'm excited to have that conversation. But I like to start off and share a story, and kind of thank you, and just for this beautiful like friendship we have that's happened in probably like maybe just a year, if not less than a year. I have to start off with, I had this, sometimes I get these ideas and dreams and visions, and I start them off in my mind, and then I write them down in my journal, and then I read them day after day. And at some point I'm like, okay, I really want to make this happen. And I start to think, who can I align with that's, share the same values and things like that. And, I didn't even actually really know you as I do now, but I just loved what you were about and all the things that you do for the community. And I don't know if you remember, I just kind of reached out to you and was like, hey, I have this thing I do. I want to share it with you. And you were like, yeah, let's meet up for coffee, which, cheers, by the way, I saw you have your coffee. And, you know, I shared with you, I kind of like vomited on you my ideas that I've been holding on to, and you were just, you know, just so in, you know, all in with me to do it. And, you know, I thank you because you helped me take my idea that I had here, that I wrote down, and later on you helped me make that idea and vision come to life in so many ways, you know. And so I'm just so grateful for you for that, because you know, I think it's so important, you know, for viewers to know that, you know, if you have an idea and you write it down, to continue reading it. And I think that's another way to help you get unstuck, but then find amazing people that you can align with, to make your dreams and visions come to life. And I feel like that was you for me, you know, during a couple of things. Um, and it's so powerful, right, to see that reality, you know, from a thought you think of to see it come to life. So I wanted to just start off with that and just say thank you,
cool.
thank you so much for that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
thank you to you too. I remember you had sent me an email, and generally, like, we get a lot of requests via email for donations or karma, and I just kind of wrote back like, yeah, I'll donate, or you can be our karma. And I remember you wrote back and you were like, can we actually meet? And I was like, all right, you know, like I'm always up for like discovering new people in this world. And then you and I went and had coffee, and I remember leaving that visit and being like, this lady is really cool.
Oh, thank you.
And I had no idea like what all you had up your sleeve, but like what you had been talking to me about that day was really cool. And I knew from the get-go that you were somebody that I wanted to be connected with and partnered with. And so, yeah, it's kind of serendipitous how life works out like that, isn't it?
Yeah. And likewise, Kitty, I left the same way, and I haven't looked back. I haven't looked back, and you know, I definitely want to share more of just what we've done together, as we kind of go through this and share it with people, because it's been some powerful things. And so, but I want to get into, you know, more about you and sharing you. You're the star of today's show, and you know, you own Modo Yoga Las Vegas, here in town. And you've been practicing yourself yoga since 2001. So you've had this as a part of your life even before you owned your own yoga studio. How did you find yoga? How did you find the practice?
I had heard about hot yoga somewhere, but like I didn't know where to look or where to find it or anything like that. And I ran into a friend of mine in Minneapolis, which is where I'm from and where I am right now. And he looked amazing. He had lost weight. He had quit smoking. And he was a drummer in a punk band, and he had gotten really bad carpal tunnel syndrome, and somebody had told him to try yoga. So he started doing yoga, and I saw him like 6 months after he started doing yoga, and he looked so amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is what hot yoga did for you. And he was like, my carpal tunnels is gone and I feel great. Wow. And so I asked him to take me to a class, and he took me to my first class, and I was hooked from day one. Like, I remembered walking out of there on the very first day and being like, I need to do this for the rest of my life. Wow. Not knowing that I was going to make a career out of it. In fact, I really had no plans of making a career out of it, but that was how I got started.
That's awesome. What is it about yoga that has helped you the most?
Definitely the peace of mind. Like, I remember going into my first yoga class, and like, I had that mentality of like the gym, where like I wanted to look good, and I was going to see how everybody else looked and look at other people. And throughout the course of that first class, I remember feeling my attention go completely inward. When I left, I just remember thinking 100% how I feel is way more important than how I look, or any, like, you know, I mean, I was so in tune with that feeling of just calmness and clarity and inner peace, and my body felt relaxed. And so over the years, like I've never really looked at yoga as my workout. I know it is a very good physical workout. You get strong, you get flexible, you can improve your cardiovascular system. But for me, it was always how the focused breathing made my mind feel by the time I got to the end of class. You know, like I would go into class and I'd be like stuck on something in my head, like a work thing or a relationship thing. And by the end of class, I would have this like clarity about it. And you know, at the time, I couldn't explain it. I didn't know why that was happening. Now, fast forward several yoga trainings later and 15 years of teaching and lots of scientific research, I now know why that happens, you know, because there are like research studies that show what happens to our brain waves when we focus on our breathing, either in yoga or in meditation.
Right.
And I now know like how that practice, you know, frees up your mind to have these insights. But at the time, like these things were happening to me and I couldn't explain them. I just knew that they were happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Can you share just one of those things, you know, that you've learned after, you know, your research and your years, not only practicing it, but also now teaching it? What has been that research you found that, you know, why is it that when you go in to a yoga class specifically, you come out with that blissful clarity?
Yeah. Yeah. So, when they look at your brain waves, like your brain waves when you're awake move at a certain frequency. I cannot tell you the exact number.
That's
I just
okay.
know that it's a higher frequency than when you're sleeping, right? Right in between those two, they've found is where your brain waves are when you are meditating. And meditating is really nothing more than focusing on one thing over a span of time. So you can be meditating while you're doing yoga if you're focusing on your breathing. So it brings your mind into that meditative state. And when you are in that meditative practice, you're focusing your mind on one thing so that it's not getting hooked by, you know, all of these repeating thoughts that happen over and over and over again.
Right.
And what it allows you to do over time is it allows you to actually like be aware of when your mind goes onto these thoughts and to bring it back to what you're focusing on. That's just part of it. I mean, and in the 20 years that I've been doing yoga, it's amazing how much research is out there now. I mean,
oh yeah,
there's all this research on the effect of slow breathing on the parasympathetic nervous system, which, like, if you're not familiar with that, it's the parasympathetic is actually a label for a state that your nervous system is in versus the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight. So at any given time, your nervous system is kind of either going back and forth, or it's in a combination of this like active state and this relaxed state. And the idea is both of those states are necessary. So like, we're not trying to like never be in our fight or flight state of our nervous system.
right.
But the idea is, I mean, I've heard research that like just the noise of your cell phone alerts alone during a day can keep your nervous system in its fight or flight mode all day. Oh, and wow. When it becomes problematic is when we never like back it off from that fight or flight. And the thing is, like, the part of in our brain that processes fear has not evolved in tens of thousands of years. So like our fight or flight response gets turned on, you know, like historically it should get turned on when we're actually in danger, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, in our world, we're really not in danger that much every day, but like our nervous system doesn't know the difference between the stress of actually being in danger and the stress of being quarantined, for example.
Right. For sure.
So it goes into this fight or flight response. And what happens is if it stays like that over time, it starts to draw resources away from what it considers your body's long-term projects, like healing, reproduction. And that's why, you know, you've heard like people when they are experiencing a lot of stress, it can like affect their ability to get pregnant. It's because the body is like, we're in danger, we're in danger. Let's take away those resources and put it into creating energy so that we can run from danger. So what they're finding out now is if you have a practice where you are able to back away from that fight or flight response, even for just a few minutes a day, it starts to put those resources back, and it puts the resources back into like your immune system, your body's ability to fight off not only just like illnesses, colds, but your body's ability to heal, fight off cancer cells. I mean, really, really important stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you can actually make that shift just through like a couple minutes of like slow focused breathing in a day.
Yeah.
You know? And it's amazing because that's like one of the most powerful things we can do for our health. And it's free and it works
absolutely
every time, and you can do it, you know, every single day. And I think that those kinds of research studies are coming out more and more and more. You know, they're doing research on the effects of a meditation on chronic pain. You know, people who have pain that the doctors have not found any other way to relieve the pain, they are now doing like mindfulness practices where they visualize the pain and they slow their breathing, and the pain is going away. You know, so it's really kind of amazing, all of the stuff that's out there now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just, you know, so many things come to mind, but I think it's just so amazing how we really are going back to the basics, the simplicity of things, where, you know, our bodies tuning in to what our bodies are really capable of instead of looking outward for, you know, what's a quick fix, you know, what pill can I take, right? What things can I take right now that, you know, people don't realize are going to actually be more worse for them in the long run than just taking these moments each day to be more mindful and tune in. And so I appreciate you breaking it down, because, you know, there may be people that, you know, have heard of yoga or do yoga, but don't really understand, you know, the benefits of it. And you kind of really just summed it up. And I know there's so much more research. And so I encourage those that are watching to continue, if you have already, or start doing research and learn more about it, right? Like, you know, this isn't something, you know, just because we're saying it's awesome and, you know, doing it and how it can help, you know, really experience it for yourself and do the research. But I know I'm an advocate for yoga. I love it. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I do it every single day in some form. I've only been doing it maybe for 3 years, like as my ritual now. But I would find it and then let it go, because I got stuck in that, well, it doesn't, you know, it's not like a real workout, right? You know, I would get stuck in that mindset of like, I didn't sweat, you know, or I didn't feel anything after it. But it wasn't about that. It's so much bigger than that. And so when I found what that was, I was like, oh, I get it. And every day I practice, I get it even more and more. And to go back to even your point of how it helps, you can be meditating through it. I've noticed when I'm thinking about other things outside of me, or even like there's moments where I'm like, why did that person do that? Like, that was silly. I notice I fall out of balance immediately of what I'm doing. I'm all like crescent pose, whatever. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and I'm like, why am I thinking about other people? Why am I judging why I'm doing this practice? And I'm like, let me breathe again and focus on me. Cause look at, here I am tumbling over and, you know, worrying about nothing that's worth worrying about. So you make such a good point.
Your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. And so with the breathing practice, but also like the intricacies of each posture, you are, you know, capturing the entire attention of your mind on what you're doing in the present moment.
Yeah.
And of course our mind wanders, because that's what it does.
Sure.
But then you bring it back because you're like, okay, I have to stay in this crescent lunge.
Right.
And it keeps bringing you back to focusing on just one thing.
What do you do, outside of yoga, outside of meditation, for yourself to get unstuck?
Well, sometimes I stay stuck for a little bit, which I just want to acknowledge that, like, especially in this time right now, where, we're quarantined and we're at home, that, like, just giving people the permission to be stuck for a little bit, like, if you are, and, like, not beat yourself up if you're not out there learning how to be a gourmet chef or a baker or coming out of this quarantine enlightened.
Right. Right. For sure.
Because we just have to be with what's there. But I found that for myself, the best thing to get me unstuck is to stop thinking and to take an action. Which is a lot of at the root of why I do a lot of the kind of community service and community volunteering and stuff like that. Because sometimes I feel like we can get, like, our stuck is a construct of our minds a lot of times.
Right.
Like, we think we have to have the entire thing figured out before we can take an action. And really sometimes it's like taking the action is just that, like, little aperture poked in the, to let that little bit of light in. That is going to help us, figure out what we need to do. And, sometimes, like, with the business, like, I'll get stuck on the things that business owners get stuck on: the finances, the membership, the maintenance of the space,
Sure.
the appliance broke again. And I've found that if I put one foot in front of the other, either to, get something done that I've been procrastinating on, or just to put one foot in front of the other and, like, go out and see where I can be helpful in the community, really gets me unstuck. And I have no way of explaining how, if I'm upset because the wash machine broke and I go volunteer an hour of my time teaching yoga, I have no idea how that helps the washing machine situation, but it does. It's like I come back to it and I'm like, it is what it is. Like, this is an imperfect world and washing machines break. And,
yeah.
It's like I'm usually in a better headspace to problem solve, after I've gotten myself moving and done something, like taken some sort of an action. Because, we've all been at that place where we're paralyzed into inaction by our own minds.
Right.
Like, we're either overwhelmed or we're confused, or, like, even for a while with, like, trying to set up Zoom classes for my studio, I was almost like, this is too much information and I don't know the answer. I don't know if we should stick with Instagram or if we should do Zoom. And I mean, it's a fairly small decision to have to make, but one day I just was like, today is the day that I set it up, and I sat down and I set it up. And sometimes you have to commit to taking the action before you know how it's going to look.
I know that, knowing you more now, your personal and company values align with community and giving back, which is, even before you and I have built this connection, I already had noticed. And that's huge in just my personal and business core values on my end as well. So why is this so important, not only to you, but important overall to align yourself with community and giving back?
Oh, there's so much there. I would say, like, when I take a 10,000 foot view of the situation, I can say unequivocally, the more you give, the more you get. And that applies to not only, like, myself and my business, but, like, that is something that I believe is at the heart of, like, how humanity works.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in terms of the business, like, I I feel like you have to have some other driving force besides the bottom line. Because if your main agenda every day is what do the numbers in the books look like, you're going to find yourself taking shortcuts, compromising your values.
Yeah.
Because there's always someone out there trying to tell you a different, quicker, more money-making way to do it, and it's usually not really that great.
Right.
And so I had to kind of look at the big picture and say, how am I going to know that this was a success if it's not going to be, $1 million in the bank account?
Right.
Which is not, by the way, my reality. But, and I had to look at when I put my head down on my pillow at night, obviously I need to pay the rent and I need to pay to keep the heat on and I need to pay teachers. But how am I going to feel if I know that I made a difference in the world versus that I just was looking out for myself all day long?
Right.
Kind of a thing. So there's that piece of it. And I think that it sounds really good to be of that mindset. It's wow, that's a really esteemable kind of way to be. But I'll tell you that it didn't come really 100% out of trying to make the morally and ethically right decisions. A lot of it came out of I needed to get out of my crazy mind because owning a business is extremely stressful. And it took for me, once again, to put my right foot in front of my left foot and walk myself out into the community and find where I could help. Yeah. And it made this huge shift for me because I saw what was important, what was truly important.
Right.
And in a world where I am charging people for yoga, it really kind of corrects me mentally to give it away when I can in environments where it's not accessible for people to pay a membership or come to the studio. So that's, I kind of feel like I talked in a big circle on that one, but basically it's I've noticed how much of a difference it makes in my demeanor and also that of my teachers when we shift from being focused on ourselves to let's flip that outward and see where we can focus out in the world. I mean, it really makes a tangible difference in people's happiness, their inner peace, their stress levels, their ability to deal with the hard stuff.
I want to kind of focus on that a little bit more. Yoga is so spiritual and grounding, and how do you run your business and still maintain that spiritual and grounding for yourself as well as your team and your clients that are coming through those doors?
It's hard. I've had to adapt my own practice a little bit. I've realized that I need to show up to take class 2 minutes before class starts. So if I'm going to do my practice at 9 a.m., I cruise in right before the class starts so that I can actually save that space for myself to have my own practice.
Right.
Because I know I'm going to be a better person if I am not bombarded with work right up until the minute I try to do yoga, and then I'm doing yoga and I'm still on the work, and then I come out and I'm not any more calm or clear-headed than when I went in.
Right.
And I have had to find places to do my practice outside of my own studio, because there are times that when I practice at the studio, it really has the effect that I need. But there are other times where I would get distracted by, I'll be in a posture and I'll be like, we should really paint the walls. And so sometimes I have to go to a different studio where I'm anonymous and not in charge of anything, and I'm not afraid to admit that I do that, because I've recognized that sometimes I do need to be just an anonymous face in the crowd to just get my practice and get the benefits, you know? But I do try to boil it all down to like, how are we having our yoga inform how we run the business?
Right.
Because it is important to me to show up as a business owner, exemplifying like what the yoga practice does in your daily life. And that's not to say that I can't show up and have a bad day or be stressed out, but like, am I able to display that like I have some tools now in my toolkit that I got from my yoga practice that I can use in times where things get stressful, you know? And at Modo Yoga, we have these 6 pillars that are very important to our community. And when things are feeling a little bit like wackadoodle, one of the founders of our company told me this a long time ago, to go back to the 6 pillars and look at each one. And generally, if things are like off kilter, there's probably one of them that you're not doing. And you know, all of the pillars are important, but one of them is be peace, which I take as outwardly and inwardly. So like if I'm going off on the washing machine people,
right,
like I am not being peace at that time. And it's generally going to go better if I check in with like, you know, how can I uphold that pillar in this conversation?
Right.
Healthy is another one, you know? So it's like, if I'm like working so much, I'm not sleeping, I'm not doing my practice, I'm not eating right, you know, generally things are not going to be going as well as if I actually take the time to like, you know, I need to like step away from my computer to make like a gigantic, delicious, leafy salad with lots of good, nutritious food in it, and like shut all my screens and eat it without looking at my phone and stuff like that. So I'm really thankful that as a company, we have these values that we can lean on to inform the way that we work. Because sometimes, you know, when we're in that crisis, it's not easy to see. You know, like when the house is on fire, you're not walking around like talking calmly to people. Like, no, you're shooting your head off.
Sure.
So sometimes it's good to be able to like reach out and get your fire extinguisher and be like, oh yeah, like, is there a way that I can be more peaceful in this situation? Because usually that's gonna redirect the path that I'm on.
For sure. That's beautiful. I mean, that's just good advice for any business owner, even if they don't own a business that is in the holistic, you know, space, is just to, one, what are your values? What are your core values, right? Like, what do you stand for? What are your non-negotiables? And then taking it from there and taking a step back before you react, you know, so learning that grounding in many different ways. And so I think that's beautiful.
That time when I first, when the studio was brand new, because one of the other 6 pillars is be green. And you know, I don't know if you know, but like all of our studios are green. We don't use any chemicals.
Yes.
We do carbon offsetting for the carbon that's used to heat our hot rooms, stuff like that. And I was surprised when the business was brand new how many temptations there were to default on that value, to save money, get it done faster,
right?
Blah, 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 blah. And it was kind of like boot camp for like sticking to that value, because there is, you know, it would be so much easier if I just bought a bunch of cheapy plastic bottles to sell. But it's like, no, we don't do that. We don't sell single-use plastic. So like, what are our other options? How do we have a conversation with somebody who walks in and wants to know where our plastic bottles are that are for sale for $2? You know, so it is definitely that framework is something that I've leaned into quite a bit.
it was such a powerful moment when you talked about earlier how, you know, you just take that action to give back. You take the action to, you know, offer yoga when you can, at no charge. And so when we did the supply teacher pop-up at Modo, you know, one of the ideas and visions that I had that you made come true, you know, I just remember like, you know, we're doing this for the teachers. This is so awesome to have them, you know, come to a studio where they don't have to worry about anything and they can just relieve themselves and, you know, have, you know, let go of whatever that's on their minds individually. And I just remember, you know, we were set up and ready to go. And I just see these teachers walking in, and this sigh of relief just comes over them. They're like, I'm here. And
Yeah.
most of them had never been, I don't think any of them had ever been to your studio. We had what, about 20 so teachers total come, little maybe under 20.
Yeah, I thought we
Was
had
it over
almost 30.
Oh,
It
even
was a
better.
lot. Yeah.
I can't even remember, but we had a good turnout. And I just remember seeing these teachers just feel, they hadn't even gone through the class yet. And they just automatically, everything just dropped, like their shoulder dropped, everything
Yeah.
just like, I'm here. And because, you know, they had no worry. They could just show up and bring their mat. I think some even didn't or forgot and were like, no worries, we got you. You know, the most we asked them to do was just, you know, sign up really quick through your, you know, quick registration just to make sure, you know, the liability waivers are signed. But, you know, we had the school supplies waiting for them. And, you know, they all walked in to the studio and, you know, they came out even more relaxed and more relieved and whatever it is, right? But what the powerful part was for me was when you came out of that room and you were glowing. And I get emotional thinking about it because you were just glowing. And I just remember how happy you were to share that space and hold space for 30 odd teachers, you know, that were just coming there to just do yoga for the first time or just, you know, whatever it is for them. But you were just so happy and glowing. And it just made me feel good because I realized that something that, again, that idea I had in my mind was impacting more than I thought it was impacting. I thought, hey, we're just going to help these awesome teachers. But we did do that. And then it impacted you and it impacted me and it impacted, you know, our team and everyone. Because when I left that studio, when I left after that pop-up, I was so energized. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best feeling in the whole world.
Yeah.
Because not only were 30 teachers happy and feeling good and could go off to the rest of their day, it was on a Saturday so they could just finish their weekend out however, you know, they had to, and then go back to school on Monday when school was in session at the time.
Yeah.
But it made you happy. And we did that together. And it was just, and then it made me happy. And it was just like,
Yeah.
it was just so, so beautiful. And so, again, thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, the more you give, the more you get back.
It's so
I
true.
mean,
And
I've seen it over and over. I've lived it over and over. And, you know, I've always, not always, but I've known for a long time in my teaching that I feel that way after I teach. I get the calmness. I get the centeredness. You know,
yeah.
it's like that energy flow. And I feel like the teachers, my gosh, like they give and give and give and give and give all day long. And I'm sure when they walked in that door, it was like, okay, we're giving to you guys now.
Yeah.
And without even, you know, verbalizing that, just for them to like be in the student role.
Yeah.
And to be
Yes.
like, okay, now the energy is flowing toward me, whereas usually it flows away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great day. They were awesome.
It was such a good day, and you put it even more beautifully than I could have. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But you host Karma Fridays, and I know that's something near and dear to you as well as to the company. So can you tell us more about those that don't know about Karma Fridays?
Yeah, and you are correct. Right now, we're not doing them, but we'll start them up again as soon as the studio can open its doors again. So it's every Friday at 7:00. The class is just a $5 drop-in.
Oh, wow.
100% of that money goes to the selected charity or organization.
Mm-hmm.
And for 10 months out of the year, we pick local organizations and we have each organization for 2 months at a time. So, and actually, Supply a Teacher might be June and July. I have to go back and look at my notes
Oh,
from
no,
when
it's
we
all
talked
good.
about it before.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, and the organizations that we pick are generally either something that somebody has a connection to, either a teacher has a connection to it or a student does, or we've had ones where people have heard about it through the grapevine and they'll approach me, and we're open to whatever. But we, and when we partner with an organization, we don't ask them to do anything because most of these are nonprofits. They're already super busy. They don't have a ton of resources. But, with the idea that like the more they can help promote, the better it's going to be for how much money we can raise for them. But it's really a great way for people to try yoga because it's just $5.
Heck yeah.
We have some people who come every Friday and that's all they've ever done, because they're not in a position where they can either use a full membership, or maybe they just, maybe they can only come once a week and they're like, it's not worth it to pay $100 a month if I can only come once a week. So they come
Sure.
Friday classes. And it's really been a great way for us to make some cool alliances and relationships out in the community.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that concept is just beautiful. I mean, $5 for yoga. I mean, you can't go wrong. I mean, you really can't go wrong, even if you're not in a, like you said, in a place to afford it in memberships and passes and things like that. But to have a great class, connect with others, and give back, like that is, I mean, that idea is amazing. And I've attended those karma classes. That's actually how I found out about Modo yoga.
Oh, cool.
Was because the Cupcake Girls, which we both know we're connected to as well, they were promoting, as a good nonprofit should, I'm going to put it out there that even though you don't request or ask them to promote, I definitely think that if you are selected, or even if you, especially if you ask, to take up that time, definitely promote. I think that's so important. And so, so important because, I mean, it's the karma, right? You have to support those that are supporting you, even if it's just a post and things like that, getting people to go, and it benefits them. The more you promote. And sorry, I go on a tangent with this because like I'm in that world, I'm in that space, and we always share like just promote in some way because this is benefiting you. The more people that show up to those classes for 2 months, that's a lot. The more they're going to benefit in the long run, especially with all the proceeds going to them. So
I feel like a lot of nonprofits they're used to like the go out and get them kind of attitude because they're always fundraising, they're always looking for donors. And so I would say most of the people that we work with do I mean, it's just kind of like an automatic reflex to like go out and promote and do stuff like that. But we do want to make sure that if people are in need of, this connection for karma classes to make some money, that they don't feel like they have to be pressured to do it. Cause we do want to make it accessible to anybody. But yes, I will say that the ones that promote it make a lot more money for themselves.
Absolutely. And I think it's just a great different way, that you offer that, because a lot of the times, like you said, they're always trying to find new ways to fundraise, and, getting people not only to go into your studio, but it's something that's personal for them, right? To get their bodies moving, to go inward during that 60 minutes, and they're giving back. Like there's just so much good that's happening all at the same time that, I think it's definitely well worth it, to just highlight what you guys are doing, especially those that are connected to it. So we will definitely be promoting very, very well, Kitty. Even if the Supply Teacher's not there, you continue to just let us know what you guys have going on, and we will promote it and get it out there to people and share it, because the studio, your team are amazing, and we got your back. So you let us know anything that you guys have going on, and we'll definitely share it within our network. What are your plans? What are your plans when things open back up? What things are you and your team like kind of gearing up for that moment?
So When we open, we're actually going to open at like 50% capacity.
Okay.
Just because I don't know, like I could probably name you a dozen people who will be there ready for class on day one. But I kind of want the community to dictate the pace that we get back up to speed, because I'm not certain that everybody's going to come back right away.
Sure.
And then we also just want to make sure that we are being safe. So we will probably have a lower class capacity so that people can have 6 to 10 feet between every single mat. We're lucky that our room is so big, because even with, 20 people in there, you can probably still have 6 to 10 feet between the mats.
Oh, wow.
And so we're going to start with that. Like I said, we're going to continue with some online offerings for those members of ours that are not ready to come back right away.
Sure.
And then we're just going to kind of take it one day at a time. We did have several members who were furloughed or lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And I am going to make a special consideration for those people so that they can come back. So like I'll have some sort of like a discounted something on their first couple months back or whatever, because I do know that every time I sit and I think like I'm the only person that's being affected by this, I'm like, oh wait, actually every single person on the planet is being affected.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that I'm keeping those members in consideration that experience much more hardship than others maybe.
Sure. That's awesome.
And we might do some outside classes. One of the teachers brought that up the other day, that like it might be really awesome to do like Sunset Park classes, just because it's outside and people seem to feel more comfortable outside in groups right now. So yeah, just keep your eyes on our social media and on our newsletter. We'll be posting whatever it is that we are getting up to.
That's awesome. And what is your social media?
Modo Yoga Las Vegas.
Perfect. Okay. And then we can sign up for your newsletter through that.
Yep, you can. Yes, there is a link to sign up for the newsletter through our Instagram. Otherwise, you can go to modoyogalasvegas.com and sign up for the newsletter. You can also email me at info@modoyogalasvegas.com if you can't figure out how to sign up for it. I can put you on the list that way.
Perfect. That's awesome. I wanted to touch on one other thing before we left that I had noticed about your studio in particular, and your team, you and your team, is that you guys pivoted so quickly once everything, happened. Once the doors had to shut, everything happened. You guys automatically, went online and, was like, okay, we have Instagram. Like you utilized a resource instantly and was like, okay, we have Instagram. And we can set, we can reach out to our teachers. Like I'm kind of just going through in my mind, like what you guys did, because I saw the product. Already had a list every day of, who was teaching, what time, what they're teaching. What was that response? How was the response been, with your clients, being that resource to your community, like right away, like we're closed on that end, but we're not shut down here. Like we still got your back.
Yeah, we had a great response. I mean, initially people were just so thankful because, we take it for granted, all of these things that are part of our regular routine. And then all of a sudden when we don't have them anymore, you panic for a second. So people were really grateful for just having the classes that they could tap into on their own time. I think people wanted a little bit of normalcy in their lives too. So like, we do have an offering through like our worldwide community where you can get an online streaming subscription, and it's teachers from Modo studios all over the world.
Oh, that's cool.
And people were like, that's great, but you know what? We're so happy to see faces that we know.
Right.
So people were really excited to be able to, connect and see the teachers that they're used to. And now that we've been in it for several weeks, I think people are thankful for just something to kind of keep them connected.
Yeah, which is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I, I have to mention again, like I've even enjoyed it. I've taken classes I've never even taken before. As I mentioned, like the yoga sculpt and things like that. And it really did, like, you teach those classes, and I just felt so connected again, like, to see you and, teaching me. And like I said, I'm talking to you, you can't hear me obviously, but I'm like talking to you like, Kitty, come on. And when I mentioned like the push-ups, I'm like, oh, Kitty. And I'm like, I'm like, okay, because Kitty's saying I can do it. And so, yeah, it's just really awesome how you guys have just continued to be that resource and helping people, stay with their routines. I think that's beautiful. Or like someone like myself, I'm sure, is like, you know what, I've never done this before. Let me use this time I have to go in and try this. And so I can only imagine that you're gonna see new faces coming into your studio more once those doors open, because you became that resource for them that they didn't know they needed, or they did need and decided like, well, I have the time, let me now start this. Yeah. And so I think that's really cool.
Yeah, we've had a big response from like people who aren't currently members, which has been kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I taught yoga sculpt this morning on Zoom, and I had somebody in New York City, somebody in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, somebody in Minneapolis, somebody in Las Vegas, like all on the class. So that kind of stuff's pretty cool to see too.
Yeah. And I know it was important for you too, right? I know you guys did IG because it was like, well, we have it. It's easy, like you had mentioned, but I think now, and we can see you. So like when we mentioned earlier, you're like, hey, it's so good to see you. I'm like, well, it's good to see you, but I've been seeing you technically. We just haven't had this dialogue, obviously, this chat. But I think it's even important to you to now be able to, hey, I can now see you and actually talk to you as you are doing this move that I'm leading you through. And I think that was so cool too, that it's important for you as well.
It sure is. It's amazing how good it is to see people that I haven't seen in a while. It's like we kind of take those connections for granted when we have them all the time, and then to like see somebody's face that you hadn't seen in a while is really, really pretty awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Kitty, it's been such a pleasure knowing you, and since day one, and I so am excited to continue our partnership, our friendship, our connection.